Hey guys, Scott Short here with Empire Home Loan Corporation. My NLS number is 225998. My California DRE license is 01074493. Long number. Go ahead, go.
And I am Jamie Furlong, managing partner with Legacy Investment Real Estate.
Boom. Here we go. So Jamie is a great friend of ours. I met her in an elevator old office, so it's kind of a cool thing. People in the elevator, so it's cool that she let me talk to her. It's like, get away, those kids. But we're talking today about a thing called the Delaware Statutory Trust. That's what she does. So break it down. What is the Delaware Statutory Trust and why somebody should care?
I'd be happy to, and I'm grateful for the opportunity to chat about this because, Scott and I both work in the world of real estate, and yet the solutions I provide are quite niche and relatively unknown to a lot of real estate professionals. And so I appreciate the opportunity, and what Scott and I both love to do is to make sure real estate professionals and real estate investors understand all of their options when they're making their real estate investment plans. So what I seek to help people with is navigating 1031 exchanges.
What's that?
A 1031 exchange is a part of the IRS tax code that allows someone who owns investment real estate, so not a primary residence, but investment property, when they sell that property, typically it's appreciated, which would trigger a capital gain, which is taxable. But the 1031 exchange tax code, if you follow the rules, allows you to defer that capital gain if you reinvest the proceeds into another investment property. So that's where my conversation usually starts with clients. They already own investment property and they are wondering if that investment property is still the best investment for them at that point in their life. A lot of time these conversations happen with their realtor. So a realtor might say to that investor, well, you can keep the property you own, or you can sell it, and if you sell it, you might have a significant tax liability, or you can do a 1031 exchange, and as a realtor, they might start talking to you about more property types similar to what you currently own, like another single-family rental home. What isn't a part of that conversation often is the Delaware Statutory Trust. So what I like to do is I like to join that conversation with the investor, with the realtor, with the advisory team, and say, in addition to keeping the home, selling it, or exchanging into another rental home, there is another option called a Delaware Statutory Trust. And I haven't yet told you exactly what the Delaware Statutory
Thank you.
Trust
I was going to
is.
ask that question. So good. You read my mind. Go ahead.
It's essentially an IRS recognized replacement property or investment available to accredited investors who are...
What's a great investor?
Good question.
Thank you.
An accredited investor is either an individual whose annual income is $200,000 and expected to continue to be that, or if you file jointly $300,000 of income, or net worth outside of your primary residence of $1 million, either single or jointly if you file jointly. So not everybody's going to qualify as an accredited investor, which is one criteria for something like a Delaware Statutory Trust investment. There's also some other suitability requirements, and that's a big part of my job is determining if someone might be suitable for this. But the concept is a Delaware Statutory Trust is recognized by the IRS as like-kind for the purposes of a 1031 exchange. The key benefits are that it is totally passive to the investor.
What's that mean?
The investor does nothing.
Good, thank you.
All daily and annual and ongoing management and responsibility and decisions are handled by a third-party sponsor company. So Scott, have you ever heard somebody complain about being a landlord?
Oh, yeah. The three T's, right?
Yeah.
Tenants, trash, and toilets. Is that what it is?
Right, and we live in California.
Yep.
So in addition to the everyday difficulties of owning investment properties, like dealing with tenants
Yep.
and maintenance, there's also a lot of regulatory issues in California. Lots of people struggled during COVID with eviction moratoriums and that sort of thing. So in our world, we meet people who say, it would be wonderful if I could get out of this labor and capital intensive management
Right.
and investment property I own, but what solution is available that excludes me from having to continue to be a landlord and a manager? So that is the primary appeal of a Delaware Statutory Trust. The investor does not have to deal with any of the property level issues.
Or the problem is, tell about the timeline. If you can't meet the timeline, what happens?
Yeah, so if any of you have been in a 1031 exchange before, you know that the IRS has imposed pretty strict timelines for completing your exchange. The most restrictive timeline would be most people have only 45 days from the time they close escrow on the property they're selling to identify what they plan to buy. And there's some rules on what that identification form and list can look like. But it can be really hard in just 45 days to find a property that you like, do your due diligence on it, write an offer, get an offer accepted. Especially over the past couple of years, crazy market. The Delaware Statutory Trust exists. There's a perpetual, or there's usually a perpetual inventory of Delaware Statutory Trust properties. So what I love to see is when the real estate investor starts on their plan early and gets introduced to the Delaware Statutory Trust early, so that they can keep it in mind if they're suitable and an accredited investor. They can keep it in mind as a backup. So what that might look like is they work with their realtor and they go around town and they look at properties, but if they don't find something they like, they could potentially pivot to something like the Delaware Statutory Trust with just a few days left on their identification timeline.
So just to set it up. So when they talk to you, how many days when they come into screaming in, they didn't what they told you to do first was talk to you beforehand. They come screaming in. How many days last minute do you need to deal with somebody?
I never want to see anybody make a rushed decision. Right. I think that could lead to bad decisions. Yep. And, in this conversation, we've talked a lot about suitability. Yep. The Delaware Statutory Trust is a complex investment with a lot of potential benefits and a lot of risks. And it is critical that the investor have a series of conversations with me to understand the potential benefits and the risks. Good. Can we expedite those conversations? If my schedule allows for it, yes. I have had some last-minute calls from lawyers and CPAs whose clients need this guidance. So long. If you want to consider a Delaware Statutory Trust as a backup option for your exchange, it must be included on your ID form within the 45 days. You cannot call me on day 46. Is it possible to have the conversations we need to have on day 45? It's possible, but I hope this video reaches more people so that they call me months in advance of their exchange or weeks in advance of their exchange and not at the last minute. That's always my preference.
So what happens? So they come to you and say, I want to do a Delaware Statutory Trust. How do you just kind of walk through this conversation with somebody? Let's say somebody's, right before they retire, someone's retired. It seems like that's kind of your almost your book. Or give me an example of that.
Yeah, so you're referring to what does a typical DST investor maybe look like, and then what's the process?
Thank you.
Very rarely does someone call me and say, I want to do a DST investment. More commonly, someone is referred to me by another professional, their realtor, their lawyer, their CPA, for example, and they say, hey, this person who I like knows my story, and they think I might be interested in a Delaware Statutory Trust, but I've never heard of it. Jamie, what is this?
Right.
So most people are coming to me not even knowing what a Delaware Statutory Trust is. So there's a lot of fundamentals to cover, but the way we approach our clients is helping them achieve their goals. What are your goals? What are your income needs? What are your liquidity needs? What do the rest of your investments look like? Can a DST help you meet your goals? Is it a better solution than what you currently own? And are you comfortable with all of the risks? So there are a series of conversations we will have with prospects to make sure they understand what this investment is and make sure we understand their goals. If it's a right fit, eventually we move to the point where our team makes recommendations for them. Within the inventory of available properties, we would begin to make recommendations that we think will help them achieve their goals and at the right risk level for them. Many of our clients are able to complete their 1031 exchange well in advance of the 45-day deadline because we can do a lot of planning in advance. A lot of our clients, we mentioned this a minute ago, people reach a point where they're tired of being a landlord. That's usually later in life, maybe in retirement. They want to travel more, for example. So a lot of our clients and a lot of DST investors are older and their investment objectives have shifted a little bit. It's less about growth. It's more about capital preservation and predictable income. Usually they're living on fixed income because they're retired. And so we do see a lot of the DST inventory property types sort of cater to that demographic, although there are other property types and kind of risk profiles that we can serve also.
So let's say if somebody's an older person and they have the DST rate, they pass away, is that ownership in that, is that passable? How's that work?
Yeah, so we always have to be mindful of current tax and estate planning laws, but currently it is, for many of my clients, a very simple asset to pass on because your investment is in real property, but management is taken care of by a third party. So what the individual investor is really dealing with is paper.
Right.
And so I've had, unfortunately, several clients who passed away, and what happens is their financial advisor or their estate planning lawyer calls me. We get a copy of the death certificate. We look at the, their estate plan. A lot of my clients make their investment via a family trust.
Thank you.
So but they could also invest as an individual or husband and wife or spouses. But we follow the trust. In a lot of cases, there's beneficiaries, usually multiple.
Right.
So this is what's
complex.
convenient. Well, actually, the DST, it's super
good. Okay, go ahead.
convenient.
Fire. Like it.
If you have 3 beneficiaries and you're splitting your assets 3 ways, we simply work with the DST sponsor to re-register the ownership out of the trust and separately into the names of the 3 beneficiaries.
Okay.
So again, this is a totally divisible fractional ownership. You can divide your real estate asset into 3, and each beneficiary will end up with their own ownership and totally separate from the others. So for estate planning purposes, we've found that our clients, the surviving beneficiaries, appreciate the simplicity of this ownership structure over inheriting, say, a portfolio of mom and dad's 20 single-family rental homes across Sacramento, and now they're trying to figure out who's going to manage it and what they're going to sell and when and financing and all of that.
So I'm going to throw the singer at you. So let's say, like we're using our example of three beneficiaries. Mm-hmm. Let's say if one of them doesn't want it, they want it out, they want their money now. How does that play out?
These investments are illiquid.
Okay.
There's no secondary
you got
market.
the word illiquid, not liquid. Illiquid. Yeah, not liquid.
There is no secondary market. So what the beneficiaries need to be comfortable with, and we talked to the original investor about this, is when the passing happens and they inherit this, they're going to remain owners for the rest of that investment period, which is an indeterminate period of time. There are some historical averages as far as how long DSTs are traditionally owned, but it really can't be known. So the beneficiaries need to understand, and we need to communicate with them in advance that it's an illiquid investment, and they cannot sell early. They're waiting for that property, for that investment to sell, at which point in time we do expect, because in a lot of cases when they receive that ownership, when they inherit that ownership, there are oftentimes a step up in basis, which is another way of saying the taxes.
Talk to your tax person.
Definitely talk to your tax person. But oftentimes the children or the beneficiaries don't have the tax liability that the original investor had. So when that DST property does sell, they can walk away with the cash without potentially a large tax bill.
So would it be possible, we're not tax bill, let's talk to your tax person, but let's say it's possible, let's say like back to the 3 people, one person is not wanting it, let's say the other 2 parties buy him out, and those 2 people go, is that feasible or is that getting kind of cuckoo?
They don't even need to buy each other out because when they inherit it, they get their own ownership and they can make decisions on their own.
Okay.
Let's say there's a sale of that DST property and 2 of the kids want to pull their money together and make a joint investment. They should be able to do that separate from me, because when that DST property sells, there usually are some cash proceeds. They can check a box that says we're going to do a 1031 exchange, send the money to our qualified intermediary, or they can say send us the cash, and then brother and sister can say, hey, we both just got a big lump of money, let's go buy something together. It's really flexible.
Which is smarter to make sure you use the tax law as best they can, right?
Yeah, definitely. And like you keep saying, when you're making these decisions, get as much perspective as possible. Your tax preparer, your financial advisor, your broker, your realtor, your lender, your cousins, me.
Just not Uncle Billy. Uncle Billy don't know nothing. Leave that guy alone. Just kidding.
Yeah, you might not appreciate everybody's advice.
Right. So let's say this. So when someone calls you, they come meet you face to face. You Zoom with people. I mean, you did everything, right? You're kind of open to all different avenues.
I am.
Cool.
We both live and work in Sacramento. But in the world of 1031 exchanges, I can, it's possible to work with exchangers all over the country. I do have clients outside of the state of California, so if it's a virtual meeting, great. If it's in person, that's great too.
So now, your investments that you have, do you have anything outside the United States, or is it all inside the United States?
The 1031 exchange tax code does require that the property you're selling and the property you're buying be within U.S. territories. So because most of my clients are selling property in the U.S., the inventory of DST properties I have are in the United States.
Cool, okay. The next question is going to be, so you have kind of a wide menu of different things you invest in. So can you break it down, like apartment complexes, houses, what do you guys have?
Yeah. So you're right, there is a menu of sorts. So just like if you were working with a realtor to show you homes to buy and they drive around and show you what's available, with me I can always show you the menu of what's available. And what you'll notice when you look at this menu, you'll notice that it really represents, it's going to change over time, and it represents or seeks to represent what are the appropriate opportunities in the current market and current cycle. And as time changes and we get into different cycles, you might see different trends in this inventory. But generally speaking, any investment property might be available. Industrial properties, essential retail, medical, apartments, self-storage, student housing, even mineral rights.
Can you buy a doctor practice? Into a doctor's practice?
You can 1031 exchange into real property, a building.
Okay, gotcha. Go.
You cannot 1031 exchange into a business.
Gotcha. Cool. Thank you. And talk to your tax person.
So the inventory can really cover a lot of bases as far as different property types and geographies. So this gives an investor who maybe typically was restricted or looked just in their home market, like Sacramento, this gives them access and opportunities all over the country, and for the first time ever in a lot of cases, it gives them the opportunity to buy into property types that they couldn't access or afford on their own. They could potentially become a fractional owner of a 300-unit student housing property or an Amazon warehouse.
There you go, okay.
And this allows people to diversify their proceeds if they want. There's some benefits to diversifying. There's also some kind of balancing.
So you can actually have a lot of money. Say, God, let's say you have $500,000, right? So I can put some money here in this apartment complex, some money in the Amazon place. So I can kind of play cards with it, right? Or Monopoly.
You can.
Okay,
and that's part of the conversations we have, are determining if that's what we want to do. If we want to diversify your money or maybe keep it in one one piece and one property.
Okay. So last question, I don't want to take too much. I know you got a meeting pretty soon. What is the weirdest thing you've invested in?
The weirdest thing I've invested in?
I caught it there. It's a singer. It's a singer.
I perhaps haven't done the weirdest thing yet, but I do personally take advantage of the opportunity to be a passive investor in properties all over the country, actually even all over the world. So what, the world our parents grew up in, where you could, you save up some cash and you buy a rental home and you rent it out, and now you bought it for $75,000 and now it's worth $4 million. That's not the world we live in anymore. There are a lot of benefits to investing in real estate, especially as an alternative to like the stock market, but it can be hard for the everyday person to access that. And so the world that I work in and what we offer at Legacy Investment Real Estate is, for accredited investors who are suitable, the opportunity to invest in real estate without having to do anything. So I've invested in student housing, oil and gas,
that's really cool.
storage.
Amazon warehouse?
No,
Amazon warehouse.
no,
Not yet.
But I'm always, I'm always looking for an opportunity.
Okay.
Whatever makes sense for me at that time in the market at that time, I'll be open-minded to.
I like it. So, how do people get a hold of you?
Please call our office at area code 916-908-1031.
Wow.
And again, I'm Jamie with Legacy Investment Real Estate, and I welcome the opportunity to tell you more about the world of Delaware Statutory trusts and passive real estate investing.
And she's very nice. And she probably younger than my daughter, so we'll talk about it later. No, I'm just kidding. So thank you guys. We're here at Dantorels restaurant here. So please, visit and support our local businesses. We appreciate it, you guys. So thanks again.
You're welcome.
I appreciate you in my elevator a long time ago. But there we go. Thank you guys. Have a great day.